Welcome to the Small Business Show. My name is Swire from Garuda Promo. Today we have a graphic designer, Amy Greenworth from Blue Raspberry Design. How are you doing, Amy?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on, Swire.
Nice to have you. Can you give all the viewer a background of what you do and how you get involved in graphic design?
Yeah, so Blue Raspberry Design is a graphic design, branding, web design studio. We're really focused on environmental and green graphic design. So we put the environment at pretty much the forefront of every single thing that we do. But I really got interested in design kind of from a young age. I was always playing around in computer programs and making designs and such. So yeah, then it just kind of turned into a career and I struck out on my own and this is where I am.
That's great. So today I know the topic we want to discuss is branding guide. So can you let the viewer know what is a branding guide and how can a business benefit from having a branding guide?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I can pull up the presentation here to start showing on that. So before really delving into a business branding guide, I wanted to back up just a touch and talk about what branding is. I've seen a lot of I think it's Squarespace in their videos, they talk about how your brand starts with your website, and that's not accurate. And then also a lot of people use the word branding and logo synonymously, and that's also not accurate. Like a logo is part of your brand, but it's not your identity.
Right.
So branding is really the distinctive wording or design used to identify your business, a person, or an idea. So I'll focus on the visuals because I'm a graphic designer, but wording and stuff really does play a part into it as well.
I know copywriting, how you describe the business could be part of your branding strategies too.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll share an example of one of the recent branding guides that I did. So this is for Hannah Jones. She just graduated college and is going out into the job market. So to really put her best foot forward, she wanted a personal brand to highlight who she is. So this is what I put together for her.
Okay.
So you can see right away, it does start with a logo, the guide itself. So it really does talk about, though, it's not about what you like. It's about what does this mean? So the logo really needed to represent how fun, open, energetic, and like modern Hannah approaches things. So it needed to represent her as well as resonate with the market that she was talking to.
Okay.
And then on top of this, you need kind of more than one logo. You need like a whole logo system in your brand. So while the first one is very square, would work really well in those types of scenarios. Maybe if you're thinking about like a business card and you want it to be horizontal and you want the logo to take up the majority of one side of it, the secondary logo might work better because it's more horizontal with the name on one line, but they still relate to each other and they're still all part of the same branding elements.
That's a perfect option because we'll have client. Obviously, most people design their logo for their website and business card. They never design their logo for promotional product. But then on promotional product, there are 5,000, 10,000 different type of service. Like you said, one good for maybe a square, maybe a circle, but then you can print a circle type logo on the pen as well as the secondary logo that you have. So that's a perfect example.
Right, very true. Yeah, and then kind of more on top of that, there's an icon and a type mark that was also developed for Hannah. So the icon that would probably work really well on like a button or social media, stuff like that. And then the type mark is more where you don't have that space to put the whole thing. So like what you said with the pen, maybe the whole secondary logo doesn't fit. So then you just go to the type mark. And then also because of how this logo was set up with the primary and secondary, a secondary type mark was also developed for Hannah. And then lastly, a submark, and I use this term very loosely for submark, but really it's just kind of another mark that's adjacent to the logo. So this one could work really well as like a frame to photography or, even with promotional materials, maybe it's like an accent on like a bag or something,
like
like
a
and just really,
watermark, right? Like
yeah,
like when I have like all the banners around the show right now. So kind of like those to make it, consistent with the brand. That's very nice.
yeah, exactly. Um, And then also along with the guide, so it lays out all these resources that you have to use, but it also talks about the best practices and the usage. So like you don't want to use the black with the light pink on like a really dark color, or it's really going to wash out the logo. You want to be more conscious of how you're using it. So I mean that ties into all promotional materials, printing and stuff too. Like if you have a darker colored you know, piece of fabric or something, printing black on it isn't really going to work. It's not going to
Mhm.
be recognizable, especially not from a distance.
So
Um,
you actually finish the guide and then you teach Hannah how to use the guide, basically, correct?
yeah, yep. And then throughout the whole thing, there's like small usage notes and tidbits just as a reminder of like, oh yeah, this is what this means,
Okay.
type of a thing. So yeah, it really becomes like their roadmap to their brand. Um, and then also how to use it with photography as well. Hannah herself was actually a photographer, but I mean, even if she wanted to work with somebody else, she could go to the photographer, show them this page, and be like, okay, this is how my brand needs to work with these photos. Let's talk about what their composition needs to look like in order to keep the brand consistent. So, yeah, it can really work on multiple levels in that sense. Um, And then also to talk about, so a lot of the logos have a lot of different colors to them, but really defining a color palette, and this keeps everything consistent because color is, one of those first immediately recognizable things, and you want everything to be consistent. Even if you use pink, there's how many different shades of pink? A ton.
Mhm.
So you want to like be able to reference back to the same one or get it as close as possible, really with everything that you do. Um, and then same goes for fonts. Like say you're creating a brochure or something, okay, you're like, I know that my headings need to be in this font to keep consistency. This is what my body copy should be so that it's legible, and all those things.
What I have thought on fonts, because I know, as a client, sometimes they want something that more fancy, more elaborate, but then it's when it comes to printing, as a printer, a lot of times there are fonts that are not print as well than the standard blocky font. Like how do you balance the design and the actual functionality when it gets to the printing standpoint?
Yeah, I've run into that a lot too. I think one of the main things is there's ones that I define very much for like this will work much better in a digital space and this will work much better in a print space. So just
Yeah.
understanding the limitations of the actual font. But also, I think when selecting fonts to use in a brand, even if I find one that I really like and it's like not quite legible, it gets tossed out because, a font's purpose is to uplift, not to distract. And I think in a lot of cases with that, showing clients like the difference of, okay, this is what that font that's really fancy looks like, and this is what a very clean, like legible font looks like. Especially with promotional materials, I feel like the distance test is always important. Like, how close do you need to be to something to actually
Yeah,
work?
because sometimes the font are so small, it won't be legible, right? And especially
Yeah,
sometimes we're limited to the physical imprint area of the piece. So maybe they're doing a pin or they're doing a banner. So you can't see as well as it you will be on a banner on a pin.
right. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's too where the different logo styles come into play too. And yeah, that's kind of why the whole font guide exists too, to hopefully try to help guide that a little bit. Yeah, for printers and the business owners. Yeah.
What is the creating process? Is it this she tell you the idea, the client tell you the idea, and then you create a style guide for them, or how do you find a font that both looks nice on the eye and then that works well, from the printing standpoint or on a website?
Yeah. So actually, let me skip ahead a little bit. So the process, yeah. Really a lot of it starts by backing up like a ton. I always like to guide clients through a workbook of like what are your values? Like what truly drives you? And so that's kind of where the conversation starts, so that when they say that they want the font that is, a lot more fancy or something, it's like, okay, does that reflect your values? And if it does, how do we have that conversation of showing them like, okay, this is what it actually looks like printed, versus this is what it could be. Um, so yeah, really, I think a lot of branding and design is based on just conversation and really getting to the meat of why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay.
And yeah, digging up from there. But yeah, I am a fan of options as well. So like when I did start with Hannah, these were the three logos that I initially showed her as
Oh,
options.
nice.
So the first one, obviously, that's the one that she picked. The middle one was personally my favorite, but I mean, it doesn't matter what the designer wants as their favorite because it's all about the client. It really is.
Uh,
And that one ended up being a little too elegant for who she was and a little bit too rigid and professional. And then the third one was completely in the opposite direction where it was too playful, too fun,
mhm.
not professional enough. And so the first one ended up really being that mix. So yeah, I think that showing options, talking about why they resonate the way that they do, why you like what you like, why you're really passionate about something.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
I like
important.
that, this is like the complete logo, but then you're able to take away different elements and create a different version or secondary logo based on, the full logo that you have on the screen right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's personally one of my favorite parts. And, I think everything that we've talked about with how there's so many different applications, that's one of the reasons why I don't deal with just logo creation. It's you get a brand guide or you get nothing kind of when you work with me because it's too important of a thing to ignore. Yeah, it works together so much more as a system.
Do you notice that sometime when you create a branding guide, so obviously it's very elaborate, a lot of details into it,
Mhm.
as we can see. Um, do they know how to use it? Like, or maybe like in the beginning, they're all excited, they want to show everybody. But then, I think when client that I talk to, and sometime when they send us logo, they only send us a JPEG or PNG or like a low res logo, because I'm sure that you send them the high res file like Illustrator, AI, EPS, but then they couldn't open it. So they didn't think that it's important. So after like a few years, normally, then they don't have those files anymore because they thought it's just file that they don't need. So they end up having only the low res format. So how would you suggest people to use and hang on to your branding guide?
Yeah. So this is one of the pages that I want to highlight with how they use it. So in the beginning of every single book, there's this brand file format. And it tells everybody like why you need these files, like what are they exactly? And it talks about vectors versus image file, like vectors, designers, printers, we all know what it means, but I'll tell a client, do you have a vector of that? And, nobody knows what it is.
Uh,
So yeah, this breaks it down really well, with saying like the AI file or the EPS file, that's for print. You can scale it infinitely. It's transparent, and then breaking down how PNG and JPEG are for web. And then same with an SVG for web developers. And then that's represented in how the file structure is put as well. So the folders are labeled like for print use. So hopefully
nice.
people will go into this and be like, okay, I'm printing something. I need to go into the for print use file folder. Um,
Yeah, I love when
yeah.
clients send us a branding guide. So like we'll go look and all print. So that's for us. And I like, especially with your design too, like you tell exactly what color you can use, what color don't can use. So when we choose an item for a client, if we have a branding guide, then my process to help them find what they're looking for is a lot faster. So I eliminate already all the colors that they don't need, that doesn't be on brand. I just show them what's available with the color that they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And that saves everybody time. It saves everybody money. It's, this initial investment up front, it like really is so smooth and it can be used for years. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then that's also part of why, each logo has different color variations as you go deeper into the file structures, and it's broken down like that. I think when I sent this, Hannah probably got about 150 files, which sounds like a lot, but when it's broken down in like the purpose and how you're using them, it becomes very manageable and not overwhelming to look at and dig through. So yeah, that's the goal anyway.
Okay, so tell us more. So for obviously we see your example with Hannah that working with a graphic designer can obviously enhance your brand image. So in terms of promotional product, because we deal with a lot of different items, or they have different print area, how can a designer enhance or improve the outcome for promotional products?
Yeah, so I think that a designer really helps because designers and promotional product, like we speak the same language almost, like if I'm talking to you about color space and you tell me, it needs to be CMYK and it needs to be this many DPI or it needs to be a vector, I immediately know what those words mean. Whereas, a client who's in a, I don't know, let's say like real estate company or something, it's just not in their vocabulary because it's, different industries. So really the expertise and the knowledge that comes with a designer, it saves time for everybody because, you don't need to learn this whole new industry. It's all just laid out for you in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, my last question is, do you think only people in the creative industry, let's say Hannah is a photographer, so she obviously in the creative industry, do you think there are only certain type of business will need a branding guy? And what are your thoughts?
I think every business could use a branding guide, quite honestly, because so it's really, it's not about it is about looking good and looking nice, and having a really great aesthetic to it. But it's also about that brand recognition. Like, if you're scrolling through Instagram and you follow some businesses, when you see somebody's post, you want your audience to be able to recognize that it's you immediately without even having to read your name.
Right.
And that really leads to the recognition and the brand loyalty that comes with it because you're going to know what you're getting and it's going to increase that trust and it's going to increase your sales in that sense too because they'll know that it's you. And if they already like you, they're more likely to purchase from you. And also, I think, it just saves time, whether you're a photographer or in the construction industry or, like a software developer or something. Having a guidebook to reference back to, you're not going to be reinventing the wheel every single time you design something, even as you change and grow. The brand really lends itself to help you do that.
I totally agree because we all be in a daily life, and if I name coffee, mattresses, tennis shoes, then we already have a brand in mind and we know what the branding kind of look like. And then I think by having a branding guide, the upfront costs justified at the end because I couldn't tell you how many times that we try to save the client's logo because we couldn't find the right format. But then if it's done by a professional designer and you have all the format, like Amy is showing here, all the structures, if any printer that is being a business and they know how to read the file, then you can't go wrong. You won't. A lot of time people print the wrong logo and you have 1,000 of items and it's the old version of the logo that maybe they save it on the previous version. This will give you all the details. Anywhere in the world, I would say you go, if you send them the file, the guide, it will be the same color. It will be the same format. That's how a big brand like Coca-Cola will probably do. And a small business can also benefit from this by having a branding guy who details. It's kind of like a business plan. You won't go do a business without a good business plan or do marketing without a marketing plan. Branding guy is something that a business got to think inside too, because as you grow, you're going to have more exposure on website, on social media, on print, or trade shows. This is very important. So I'm glad that Amy, this is a wonderful example, and then it's a great showcase of what a branding guy can do for a business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Everything you just said, spot on. Agree with it 100%. Yeah, I think it's definitely a really great tool for businesses to have.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm going to put your contact information in the post. And if viewer have more question about Branding Guide, do reach out to Amy. And thank you so much for coming on today, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right, bye.